Hello and welcome to Elvenhome. 3 weeks on rather than 2, because at this time last week I was still pulling my hair out about whether I would ever manage to put something in here. But as you'll see in a moment, I have done. And so let's get straight on to that. The only other thing to say is that because I'm in this state of disarray, I've not been able to do a new running session. So in the well-worn phrase of the BBC, this week's running session is another chance to see a session of some months ago. In the last video, you heard me, I think it was almost a case of video therapy, talking about what the box might look like, how I might construct it. And at that point, when you saw that video, I really wasn't sure whether I could achieve it, whether it was going to work, whether it would be big enough. What you see in front of you, it's not the absolutely finished thing, of course, because this is the 3mm ply test of the top. But at least you can see what it's going to look like when it's finished. And I've done it this way rather than building it up because it isn't quite finished yet. And there are still in place there the original switches, and that's stopping me from being able to do one final piece of construction of the frame. But I will show you how I've put this together. It's been quite a journey because there's a reason I don't do much woodwork. And the principal reason I don't do much woodwork is I'm left-handed. Now, any of you who know anything about some tools, particularly bladed tools, they're often made assuming they're going to be used by a right-handed person. And it means if you're left-handed, you're able to cut the most lovely banana shapes with a straight saw that you've ever seen, because the saw is working. Instead of counteracting the effect of the right hand trying to move away from the cut, the saw is made to help you cut a straight line. With the left hander using it, it's exacerbating that effect. So I've had flashbacks of what it was like to do woodwork at school. And I well remember that when I went into the woodwork class for the first time and the woodwork teacher looked at me and said, "Oh no, a lefty." And you'll realize that he and I really didn't get on from that moment onwards. However, by perseverance, by the purchase of a mitre block, by the use of a rasp, I have more or less straight lines and have achieved this outcome. So let's take you through how it's put together. And it is very much what I was trying to explain to you in the last video. So obviously the top will just be screwed on here. Let's take this off. And this is not sitting down properly because these are still in place, and I can't, I just at the moment, I don't want to take them off until I'm absolutely sure that I'm in the right place to do it. So you have this shelf here, which is suspended from the top half of the box. And on that will be sat the point motor, the point indicator units. And from the top, from the control panel top, the wires will come down both to the units and going into these. This is numbers 2 to 18 of the point motors. I've got another 7 which are wired directly underneath this area, which I've got to bring above the board, and again that I will do once I know where my space is. The top half does, as I said, I've got these catches that hold it on. The top half comes off. If I can get it, there we go. And if I turn it over, let's just make sure I can see that you can see these. Yes. So there's some pattern makers dowels have gone in there. And obviously the other half of them are in here to put these in. I've never put pattern makers dowels in, and I bought myself a doweling jig, and I will put a picture of it up here, the box that it came in, which I was surprised just how easy it was to use. I'm not going to show you how to use it because there are loads of videos by people who really know what they're doing, who explain the various ways that you can put dowels in. But as you see, there's two in there, there's two in there, and this I rather surprised myself, I must confess. When I bolted the two pieces together and offered it up to that, they went straight in, which is a great surprise to me. And this is the 64mm wide wood that I was musing whether I would use that or the 90, and I think a couple of people advised me to go with this, and I'm happy with that because the overall size looks about right. So that piece of wood I think I'd already cut. I know I'd cut its predecessor, which was slightly too short, so I girded myself to using the saw again, and then using a rasp got it level, and because I'd got a nice banana shaped cut there. That's screwed into there. The next thing that I've got to put on is the back plate, which is going to be a piece of that 90mm wide wood, which sits nicely up here. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to decorate that in yet, but I'll work on that tomorrow, so you'll see that before the end of the video. And so this will hold the control panel top, the units, and all the wiring. And these bottom half here of these male and female chop blocks will be wired into here. So I can unclip from here and lift the whole thing out if I have to. Now, I'm seriously hoping that I will never have to. I don't expect to have to, but if I do, I was just concerned that I didn't want to get to the point where basically I had to take the whole thing apart just to be able to go in and change an LED that had stopped working. So I think this is going to work really quite well. So the last thing I've got to do, this is not yet fixed at this end because I want to be sure that it's level. And underneath here will be screwed in these distribution boards, and these will give the power, the positive and the negative coming from the CDU, which also powers the units that sit on the top. So I'm pretty nearly finished with this, and I'm not far off from actually removing these, because these all screw into chop blocks underneath. So I can remove these, leave all those in place, and if I think it's not going to work, I can reinstall these. But the next thing for me to do is to work out the backing here. I'm not sure whether one length of the 90mm wide wood would in fact go right across there, but I'm not sure whether that would just be too much, and the better thing to do is just have a piece that sits in here to close this area off, and then do something else either side. I've got to decide that finally. But the good thing for me is that this part is done, really. I've got a few screws to stick in to complete this part of it, and then start mounting things into this into this shelf, so that I'm getting closer and closer to being able to start drilling the perspex. Now, I nearly, a point last week, thought I know what I'll do now, because I can't think how this bit's going to work. I'll drill the perspex, and something in the back of my mind said, just have a look how the Heathcote motors are wired together. And I'm so glad I didn't drill the perspex, for a reason that I'll now explain. I'll take you onto the desk and just show you the latest version of the control panel top. I mentioned a few moments ago that I was on the point of drilling the perspex when a thought came to me which stopped me doing it, and I'm really glad it did. I had produced this version of the plan, which is the final version, at least I thought it was the final version, and I'd punched all the holes out and it was ready to go. But something in the back of my mind said, just go and check how the Heathcote units work, and that the way in which all the wires will move from here to here will work for you. And I'm so glad I did, because as you may be able to see, there are a number of bits of paper here. Look, it's had a close encounter with an old safety razor, where the holes have moved. The way these things work is that the momentary contact switch, the on-off-on switch, when that throws, two wires go off to the point motor and cause one or other of the solenoids to energize and attract the bar in the point motor, and the point changes. The other set of wires go off and go into here, and this unit detects which of the two positive switches, which circuit has been closed, and depending which of these two terminals here has had the circuit closed, it will make one or other of these two positive, which will make the corresponding one down this end positive. And there are two LEDs in each of these terminals at this end, one with the positive leg on the left and the other with the positive leg on the right. And certainly for these LEDs, and I think it's the same for all LEDs, but I'm not absolutely sure about that, current can only flow through an LED through the positive leg. So that's what makes one light come on or the other light to come on. And what that means is that ideally you do not want these to be too far apart, because obviously if they're a long way away you need to put more wire to bring them together so you can bring them all to the one terminal. And when I'd made changes to this plan right at the beginning, because I'd actually put things much too close together where they simply wouldn't fit, in some cases I'd been really very generous and just sent, as you'll see with this one, that actually is only saying that this point is showing this direction. If I do that, it's got to be co-wired with that LED, and that makes life rather unnecessary. Wherever I can, I wanted to get these so close together that I can actually put one wire coming from the two legs, one positive, one negative. And that will, if I can do that, that will halve the number of wires that I would need to have coming from these LEDs. So I thought that would be a jolly good thing to do. That, as I said, meant that a number of holes were pasted over and new holes cut in. I've got some paper under here, but you'll see that if you see that one, that's moved to there. That has moved up to there because it pairs with that one. This has moved from there to there because it pairs with that one. No, it pairs with that one. It helped to pair the right things together. And I think now all of these are so close together that I will be able to connect the two legs of each LED to one wire and run that back into the terminals of the Heathcote unit. So it does just show you, it always pays to think on these things. That, having done that, I thought I really do want to know the order in which I'm going to wire these into the 7 units that will be sat across. Because I don't, if I can avoid it, I want each set of wires to be going the shortest distance it can. Now the current ones are numbered 1 to 24, and so the frame is just in straight numerical order, and that makes sense. It doesn't really matter. But as you'll see, when I put the numbering on how the plan now sits, we've got things in quite different order and grouped differently, and some coming from the top and some coming from the bottom. So I thought it would make sense just to spend a little bit of time trying to work out, not the most perfect, because there's so many combinations, you it may be that I'll change things when I actually do it, but essentially that's the 7 sets of terminals, and I've translated each of the 25 point motors, yes, get it right, boy, into the place that it's going to go onto these motors. And when I relate that back to the diagram, it does group them in a sensible way. So that, I think, has got me to the point where I'm reasonably comfortable about how the wiring is going to flow to the Heathcote motors. As I mentioned earlier, I've got to find a way of bringing 7 sets of points, or the point motors, above the shelf that they're currently wired into underneath, and find a way in which I can put them there so I can connect directly from the control panel top in the same way as I'm going to do with the other ones, so that they all just plug in using the male and female chock blocks or terminal blocks. But that is the last thing I've got to do. Once I'm absolutely sure of that, I will drill the perspex. But I just don't want to drill that and then discover that actually one of the holes is in the wrong place, because that will be more than a pain. Right, so that brings you up to date with there. I'm going to go off now and do some more work on trying to put the backboard on, which I mentioned in the previous section. And I'll show you where I've got to when I've finished that. At this point, I thought I would just give you a very quick update on the underground layout. Not a lot has happened since. I'm still within the time period waiting for the designs to approve, and then the baseboards can be built, which is a good thing really, given the other things that I'm working on. But what I wasn't able to do for the last video, because I couldn't get my printer to print the plan and it all marry up. And I eventually discovered that I'd printed something in foolscap, and the printer had remembered the foolscap settings. So now I've been able to get it to marry up. This is the layout plan in its place. The white strip that you can see down here will go. That's just a piece that shows how the size. Thank you for all the comments that I had back, the people that were worried about the effect of sunlight on the layout. I think I've got a couple of responses to that. Number one is this is the only space I have, so if it doesn't go here, the layout doesn't happen. Number two, I'm grateful for your concern about fading and the light, but you do need to remember I live in Scotland and we get so little sunlight that Public Health Scotland recommend we take vitamin D tablets because you can't get enough vitamin D from the amount of sun. More seriously, this window faces north, and the sun most of the year rises and sets behind the house because we're further north. And it's only around about the summer solstice that the sun sets over to the west there and shines through onto that wall behind where the camera is. Otherwise, for the rest of the year, the sun doesn't often get in here directly. Now, of course, you can still get fading from without direct sunlight, but it won't be sitting in direct sunlight. Chris at 4 Oak Street asked what was outside the view out of here, which is a reason why there will the blind will not be brought down here. The view out of here is lovely. And I took some footage actually a couple of days ago because it's hazier today. Just showing you the view across from Corstorphine Hill to the west, running down along the Firth of Forth. We can see the coastline of Fife, Fife on the other side, and you'll see right at the end of that footage I zoomed in a bit so you can see a tiny strip of blue, which is the Forth estuary, and by the time it gets to there, that is the North Sea. It's a beautiful view. Unfortunately, it was hazy, so you didn't get to see the Ochil Hills, which when in winter, when they're snow-capped, really are divine. So I have no intention of blocking this window in any way, shape or form because the view out of it is lovely. What I may do once I've got it built is think about seeing if I can put a Perspex cover on the top in some way that would help block the UV light. But I'm not too worried about it. It's one of the trade-offs you have to make in order to be able to fit layouts into a property, and this is one of them. There was a concern about the radiator. Again, do not fear. I managed the control temperature, the flow control temperature very carefully. This does not belt out heat, and I will have access down the side to get to the radiator in the event that I need to. Also, this layout, the way the design has been suggested to me, is that it will be in two halves which can be put together, and I intend to build it in a way that means I can easily, if I need to, split this layout apart, unlike the Elvenhome, which is capable of being split apart, but that will be the end of Elvenhome when it happens. On this one, I would want to be able actually to take it apart if I can, if I need to. So that's a quick update where we are. You are getting to see the proper plan. And I think I meant to put a picture of the plan up earlier, and I'll put it up now so you can see in better detail what's down here, but it will give you a better idea of the size and how it slips in. This of course is the lower level, which will stand at 36 inches about here, so you'll get a good view of the train as it comes in and out, and then the boards with the upper level will be at 48 inches. That's what I want, because that was the whole idea of that layout. So with that, let's go back to finish the video off, because I've had second thoughts about what I put in the front of the layout to close off the control panel box. I mentioned a couple of times earlier in the video that I was going to fit onto here the back plate for the control panel. And I got as far as cutting this piece of wood and marking it up, ready to put a hole through here, through which I could feed the top chock blocks. That would then fit into there and the panel would go onto it. But it looked a bit sort of clunky. It's a great lump of wood sat there. And I was beginning to think also, what would I do either side? Because when I put the piece that's long enough to go right across there, that was just too big. That just looked like a plank had been shoved on the side of the layout. And I think what I've concluded is that I'm not going to worry about this bit for the moment. And I'm going to scratch build something to go on this side, which will close off the panel across here, but on the other side will provide something as yet undefined that suggests either the side of some factories or warehouses or something. Not sure, because it's not going to be very deep. So it's you know I'm not going to be building great things out of here, but just something that looks better when you look at it from the other side, and that will allow me to have something that probably runs across here and then tapers down to join this wall here, which has dropped down a bit. Although this might change as well, because it's possible I could lift it right, take it, as I'm taking you out of the shot, but take it right up to, let me move you here. This can come off up to that point. So if I could scratch build something that will run all the way along here down and tapering down to where it joins the canal. So we'll see where that takes me. But I think that's the second order stuff, which I will come to once this is completed, because I really do now want to get on to the point where I can really start doing the electrics underneath. I'm not looking forward to spending so much time underneath the layout, but it's got to be done. And then I can start, once I've got all the power brought up to this side. Yes, you can still see me. So I've got to bring the power that is currently coming in. You can see this red wire here, that brings the power in to the motors. So that's got to come above the board. That will also feed the power to the Heathcote motors. I've got to bring a separate wire from the common return from the point before it goes into the CDU and bring that above here. And I've got to bring the switch wires for the 7 sets of points that are directly under there up onto here as well. Once that's all done, I can, and I'm sure then how everything's going to fit together, I can finalize the plan, which I think is 99% certain now actually. Finalize the plan, drill the perspex, fit the switches, which is the first thing that will go in, because I want to take, if I can, a single wire through all the switches to give them power. And then we'll start the work of wiring in each set of points and its LEDs. So that's what's on the agenda for the next few weeks. The next video will be in 3 weeks' time, deliberately this time, because in a fortnight's time, my wife and I were going off for a weekend away in Leeds, and we've decided, or I've, bless her, she's agreed that the way we're going to go is Edinburgh to Carlisle, and then Carlisle to Leeds over the Settle and Carlisle line, which I'm hoping for good weather, because I think that should be very enjoyable. So with that happening in a fortnight's time, the next video will be in 3 weeks, and I sincerely hope by that time I will have started the work of wiring everything in. And I also hope by that time that I'll have more of an update for you for the underground layout. So that brings us really to the end for this video. I hope you've liked it. If you do, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't, because there's going to be plenty to see, particularly once I start wiring things and doing the new layout, which I'm really looking forward to getting on with at some point. And I'll speak to you again in, oh yes, comments. If you've got any comments, please do let me have your comments. They really are helpful, all of them. They all make me think and help me just to make sure I haven't missed something, because it's very easy to miss things. But if you've got any comments, please leave them below. I'm always happy to reply to them. And until I speak to you again in 3 weeks' time, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.